morning. My name is Taubenberger, and I am the chairperson of the Aging Committee. We have a quorum in front of me. To my right is Councilman Alan Dom. To my left is Councilman and Vice Chair Derek Green. And at this point, we're going to have the clerk read the title of Resolution 170375.
A resolution authorizing the Committee on Aging to hold hearings regarding senior housing and recognition of May as Senior Awareness Month.
Thank you. Well, we can't have that because it's not good, so they will not get through to me. I apologize. And some opening comments from the resolution sponsor, Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin my opening comments, just wanted to take a brief moment of silence regarding the unfortunate tragedy in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the people who are assembled here this morning to have a conversation regarding this important topic. And from my experience in a previous life, I was the chair of the board of the Center in the Park, which is a senior housing center in Vernon Park in Germantown. And one of the issues that was a constant struggle with Center in the Park was trying to make sure that we provided housing for our members. Now, we were fortunate to develop Maple Village, which is a multi-unit housing facility on a campus of Center in the Park. However, since that time period, that was developed in the late 90s, there's been constant issues and concerns for our members in reference to housing, something that I know is something very acute in the Northwest, where we have a diversity of homes, and many seniors, or as my father would say, seasoned citizens, have challenges as they become older and getting up and down stairs and need all types of adaptability type of changes to their homes. And so many seniors often want to stay in their communities, but the opportunity to do so is not as available in the Northwest. And from my travels around the city of Philadelphia, I've often seen that as an issue and concern as seasoned citizens start to downsize and as their children and or loved ones may no longer be with them or have moved away. It's more and more challenging to maintain a household, and that's why I feel this conversation is more as important to talk about what we're doing as a city to promote opportunities for housing for our treasured assets in our city, which are our seasoned citizens. So I want to thank members of the committee for being here so we can have this important conversation.
Councilman Green, thank you very much, and also for your leadership on this and bringing this forward to the committee. As chair, I also like to recognize Councilwoman Sherelle Parker, who is here with us this morning. And Councilwoman, do you have any opening remarks? And Councilman Dom, any opening remarks? In that case, will the clerk please call the first witness?
For the first panel, Lydia Hernandez-Velez and Catherine Cafano.
Good morning, buenos dias, Chairman Taubenberger and the members of the Committee on Aging. I am Lidia Hernandez-Velez, Deputy Managing Director for Aging, and I'm here to testify regarding Resolution Number 170375, introduced by Councilman Green, which calls for hearings to discuss the need for senior housing. Thank you for this opportunity to share information and perspective on a crushing issue that will be a challenge for the city in the years to come. To put the challenge in perspective, there are approximately 342,287 households in Philadelphia that include at least one person over the age of 55, according to the 2015 American Community Survey. An elder is the head of the household in 88.52% of those households. Of those households, 17.7 have an elder in the household with an income of less than 100% of the federal poverty guidelines, and 40.2 of these households have an elder with an income of less than 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Of these households, 38.3 of the homes are owned free and clear, and 33.4 are owned with a mortgage. 26.5 are rented. Regarding the homes with seniors, 54% of these homes were built before 1950, and 33% have an adult living alone. 7.6 of these households are linguistically isolated. These statistics translate to a demand for senior housing as residents' capacity to manage life given physical and cognitive challenges increase. Philadelphia suffers from a dearth of such housing for seniors. In many developments, the waiting lists are 6 months to 2 years long. Moreover, many seniors face relocating to facilities some distance from their network of a faith community, family, and friends, making them vulnerable to isolation and depression. The linguistically unique community's lack of housing impacts seniors negatively. Facing a change in the tenor of the day-to-day interactions because of a limited English proficiency contributes to negative health outcomes for isolated individuals. Just a quick review of the issues that seniors bring to the Mayor's Commission on Aging shows the pervasive nature of the housing situation. Of over 1,000 people that came to the Information and Referral Service, 70% of these issues touched on housing. Some residents were about to become homeless because their homes were in serious disrepair. Some were facing eviction because their income could not meet the increases in rents. And some were seeking assistance to obtain benefits such as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or LIHEAP because of the challenge of meeting housing or utility costs. I welcome the opportunity to work with City Council to address this ever-increasing challenge. We are a resilient city with many great ideas that can alleviate the challenge of finding homes where our senior residents can reside in dignity and safety. Seniors deserve no less. I will be happy to respond to questions.
We'll have questions when you're both finished.
Good morning, Councilman Taubenberger, Councilman Green, and members of the Committee on Aging and members of City Council. I'm Catherine Califano, First Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Development. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Resolution 170375. Like many Philadelphians, senior citizens face housing challenges. Some need help repairing their homes. As others become less mobile, they also need assistance in making their homes more accessible. Simply, others have a need for an affordable place to live. Meeting these needs can be difficult for many seniors. In Philadelphia, half of senior households have an income of less than $25,000. The City of Philadelphia, mostly through the Division of Housing and Community Development, tries to help address these needs. Traditionally, DHCD uses community development block grant funds to support the Basic Systems Repair Program. BSRP is implemented by PHDC and works with small private contractors. The program makes repairs to heating, plumbing, electric, and roofing systems of owner-occupied homes. With the help of City Council, we were thankfully able to expand this program and are able to address the 7-year backlog. BSRP targets households with incomes at 150% of poverty or less. For a one-person household, that's an income of about $18,000. In fiscal year 2017, 50% of homeowners were senior citizens. 1,040 properties were received BSRP grants in fiscal year 17 alone. In addition to our federal funding, state funding helps PHDC and its contractors reduce housing costs through energy efficiency improvements. The program targets households at 200% of poverty or less, or incomes about $24,000. In FY17, more than 50% of the households served by the weatherization program, or 711, were elderly. CDBG funds also support PHDC contractors with ECA, the Energy Coordinating Agency, to provide minor repairs to furnaces. In FY17, more than half the households served were seniors. The program serves clients at the same income level at BSRP. Additionally, the city's Housing Trust Fund supports adaptive mod, which makes accessible improvements to homes for low-income people with permanent disability. In 2017, about 70%, or 100 households, were senior citizens. You may have seen the recent report of seniors being helped through the program. We're happy to report that due to the bond financing that supported the basic systems repair and the adaptive mod program, we no longer have a waiting list for adaptive mod, and we are taking new applications. To help the housing needs of seniors, the city also uses federal and local funds to support new housing and rehabilitation of existing homes. Over the past 5 years, city-supported developments have added 600 new affordable units for seniors for housing, and more than 200 affordable homes have been rehabilitated. The city's investment of about $21 million into these units leveraged about $135 million in other funding sources. Another 100 affordable units for seniors are now under construction. These developments provide affordable housing in seniors in the neighborhoods across the city, including Logan, Port Richmond, Winfield, Center City, Mount Airy, and others. The city also uses CDBG funds for housing counseling to help seniors keep their homes. Earlier this year, the city included reverse mortgage financing prevention information on flyers sent to every water department customer. In FY17, nearly 2,000 senior households received housing counseling services from DHCD-funded agency. In FY17, the total is about 12,000 households were served. CDBG funds also support our NACs, our Neighborhood Advisory Committees. NACs work to ensure neighborhood residents, including seniors, are aware of available program. Each NAC partners with block captains, Philadelphia Corporation for Aging, to host annual health and welfare events for seniors. These events and ongoing discussions in their communities help to promote existing programs to senior citizens. The city is committed to helping seniors meet their housing needs in the programs I've described. More than 25% of all of our total services provided in FY17 were to senior citizen households. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Califano. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually a question for both Ms. Califano and Ms. Hernandez-Velez. I'm curious in reference to, first, I think you said there's no waiting list for adaptive modification as of right now. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. But I have a real concern in reference to that historically we've used community development block grant dollars for different programs and also other funding through the consolidated plan, which based on this proposed budget by federal administration would be significantly cut if not eliminated. And so my concern is, how do we leverage dollars? And two questions. One, you said about $21 million was used to leverage about $135 million. And what programs made up that $21 million? Was that just community development block grant dollars? Was that home funding?
It was a mixture of home, housing trust fund, and low-income housing tax credits.
And tax credits, right. So it's tax credits, CDBG funds, and home funds.
Correct.
And I was able to use that dollars to leverage funding at the state level.
The tax credits come from our state allocation.
So I guess one of the things I'm curious about have there been other ideas or more creative initiatives in order to leverage additional senior housing? For example, I know this end of this week there'll be a very significant event in Councilman Parker's district for Lindley Apartments, which was a mix of senior housing and also office space for West Health. Are there other ideas like that where we're looking at alternative ways to bring in dollars to create senior housing?
I think we are looking at ways to use redevelopment activity in city assets as opportunity to allow for mixed development sites. The Redevelopment Authority has issued some RFPs when we were issuing for land that encourage people coming in with a social investment as part of the strategy. There was an RFP issued for the library at 6th and Jordan. It was not successful, but we're exploring new ways to look at when we can take a public asset and have it be returned better than it was with a mixture of housing on site. We've also been working through committees that LISC has formed to help us try to preserve expiring tax credit projects, because that's a significant supply of affordable units. We estimate that there's about 10,000 low-income housing tax credits that may expire over the next 10 years.
And are you providing, now going back to my Center in the Park days, 'cause I know we're already working on that project with one of our future panels coming up about an expiring tax credit for Maple Village and trying to maintain that in senior housing. Are you providing assistance to any of the organizations that have been involved in senior housing around the city? Because my concern is that for some of these organizations, they may not have the resources or the connections to figure out how do we leverage and do, because for many of these tax credit projects, the nonprofit developer has right of first refusal to maintain the project, but if they don't have the resources, they may not even know what that means.
Correct. And so we think that there's 4 different types of strategies that we have to, when we look at national models, we look at there's regulations, there's financial incentives, there's technical assistance, and there's the information that needs to be accessible and usable. And strategies have to move at all of those areas to ensure projects are preserved. So we are looking at, we've been bringing together for-profit and nonprofit developers to think about what are strategies that are amenable across the board to preserving tax credit deals.
And do you keep like a running, I guess, timeline of those projects that are expiring? Because I think that's something that would be good to reach out for the district council members to know that, okay, next year, 2 years, the senior housing project that you may have worked on or your predecessor may have worked on 5, 10, 15 years ago is now going to expire. Here are some assets and some resources that you can work with a nonprofit partner to maintain that as senior housing, because my concern is that once those tax credits expire, then they can become market rate, and then you're going to have even less housing going forward.
We have that same concern, and yes, what we've done is we've been compiling information on tax credits, on project-based Section 8, on HUD 202, which are, so for looking at the broader universe of subsidized units, and when they are set to sunset, and thinking about strategies on how we prioritize and encourage those operators today to re-enroll.
Okay. And then finally,
And we're happy to provide that to each council person.
Yeah, that would be good if you could provide to the chair and also to all district council members, because I think that's something that it takes time to prepare, and for people to be empowered with information, then they can reach out to resources they may have to maybe help those nonprofit developers that were partners in the initial project to put together the resource they may need to maintain that project as senior housing. Ms. Hernandez-Velez, I'm curious in reference to what you may have heard from other cities and what they're dealing with senior housing. I know in the resolution we talked about senior villages, core communities. I know in Ronhurst working with Jewish Federation, they have the naturally
Occurring retirement communities, yes.
A naturally occurring retirement community, or NORC.
Yeah.
So what are those type of concepts that you may have seen in other cities that we're trying to do here?
Well, one that has come up, especially in the East Village and other places where there are properties with large properties with several rooms, is what is called the Golden Girls concept, meaning that several unrelated seniors living together. The barrier in Philadelphia is that the housing code does not permit more than 3 unrelated persons to live under the same roof. So that's been a challenge that has been brought to me. In fact, last Monday was the celebration of the 15 years of the Village movement across the nation. And part of those discussions is what alternatives for seniors who want to remain in their neighborhood, remain in their network, and continue to serve each other as the challenge of aging comes up. And that's one of the concepts that has come up, and that is to allow seniors in some properties, it's just a collaborative, almost going back to the 60s co-ops and creating that community environment to help people remain in the community that they've lived in for most of their lives.
Just a point of information on what you had just raised, and this comes from, believe it or not, our international aspect as far as sister cities. When Frankfurt, our newest sister city from Germany, sent a delegation over, one of the people was a senior who now has time, retired executive, but lives in a very same type program, which in Frankfurt, Germany, has been going on for a number of years. So I think we should, now that it's been mentioned, I should ask him, and how's it going, and what the history of it is. 'Cause it makes complete sense.
Yeah, it is a concept that engages at many levels in the sense of it's financially not a burden other than the individuals help to maintain that household. That person who owns the house, quote unquote, gets assistance.
And we may have to change our zoning.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Well,
I think it can work.
Our zoning code also provides for accessory dwelling units,
Okay.
which would be
Right.
the opportunity for a senior to carve off a part of their home as a separate unit that they would then rent and allow someone to use that space. They don't need their entire house, they may choose to have part of it. We have not in Philadelphia resolved how that's going to work. It is in the code.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
provided in the code.
Oh, really?
Yes. Accessory dwelling units
So
are in there.
then in your estimation, for us to completely embrace this type of program, what do we need to do?
Well, I think we need to review the code in terms of allowing unrelated persons living under the same roof.
Okay,
Now,
all right.
the ordinance itself is really focused on the issue of students and university residents and not
Gotcha.
having, a lot of young people, but at the same time, there is a need in Philadelphia, because we do have areas of the city like Mount Airy, like East Falls, that have huge homes where people
Right.
really want to stay there, but they can't afford it because
Right.
they can't
Right,
afford all the
right.
costs related to it. And in fact, there is a burgeoning village movement in the Northwest also. We actually have East Falls, Northwest Village, Penn's Village, and the Ronhurst Newark, and there, at the meeting last Monday, several other communities in the Northeast, South Philadelphia have expressed an interest in building villages, which I think is an
That's great.
important, both physical sense and also the relationship sense, so seniors are not isolated. That is an important part of who we are as Philadelphians. We take care of each other, and we have many programs to do that.
Yeah, there was actually, I believe, and I have to check on the status of a co-op village that was proposed for Mount Airy Presbyterian, where there would be a cooperative living space, and some of the people that were going to participate in that were seniors. But I think in reference to the making the change in the zoning code, I also would like to figure out what from both planning, in reference to how we maintain that type of change, because if you take a building and you make it into multiple units with the goal of allowing that for seniors, what happens if it's not enforced? And I can see from a near neighbor perspective, yes, we supported this and we did a proviso and those type of things to have this property converted from a single family to multifamily for expressly for seniors. But what happens if a future property owner doesn't follow that,
Right.
and then how do you enforce that? And so
Yeah,
I
they
think
have-
that's
right.
some of the concerns, right, clawback, that's some of
And
the
there's
concerns
a-
that near neighbors would have.
And there's a gray area between,
Right.
as people's capacity diminishes within those kinds of units, at one point, is it a nursing home?
Right,
When is that line crossed, and
Right,
that,
right, and what
what
type of
services
supports
are
that come in.
defined?
Right,
The
okay.
other creative housing issue that I think is also a challenge in Philadelphia is grandparents caring for grandchildren, and how to address that ever burgeoning issue of housing for those kinds of units. So a grandparent needs to care for a child, but they live in a senior unit that doesn't allow younger children. They either go into the private sector, or there are some projects in Philadelphia, one that I know of, that is trying to address that demand, and would probably be the first one in Philadelphia, which is the Asociación Puertorriqueños en Marcha project at 9th and Norris.
Right.
Those are another aspect of the challenge for seniors.
And so how's that being addressed?
Well, right now, as I said, there's one property that's being developed at 9th and Norris as part of APM, Asociación
AP is part of
Puertorriqueña,
APM?
has a senior housing unit that also will have units dedicated to grandparents raising grandchildren. I haven't heard of anything else in any other part of the city, but it is something that at times, as I reviewed our information referral request, is an issue that has come up several times. I won't say it's an overwhelming issue, but it does come up.
And I just include my last question. You know, considering that our population is getting more and more seasoned, as my dad would say, this is going to be a larger and larger issue. And considering that we may have even less community developed block grant dollars going forward, I mean, what were some things that both of you would suggest that we as a city need to do in addition to the programs we already have and some of the things you've talked about?
I think we are going to have to look at new ways to find finance. We are looking at different concepts that have been proposed around generating new funding to support the production. Are there ways to contain cost, and are there ways to get other partnerships involved so that people have a longer term view, and that has attracted other private sector dollars. So New York and Chicago have set up acquisition funds that major banks have joined with, and that's increased the dollars for the production of affordable housing units. So we're looking at those options.
And when you say acquisition funds, are those dollars to acquire properties that can be used for development, or?
The way that it works in New York and Chicago, it is a fund that allows for the acquisition of tax credit projects that are expiring, that someone wants to opt out to preserve, but it also supports new production as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman, thank you. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Chairman Taubenberger, and thank you, Councilman Green, for your leadership on raising this issue, and for also mentioning the success that we are about to be able to celebrate in Logan with Wes. You know, huge special thanks and shout out to Dennis Cook, along with former State Senator Shirley Kitchen and Councilwoman Marion Tasco, because they definitely were the flag bearers in making sure that the project was seen through completion. And we may have a lot of care, but for me, a key is quality. And we just recently toured there, and you know, millennials would like to get a condo over there. That's how nice it is. And so that, oh yes, Councilman Dom, you could figure out how to parse those out if you went. And I encourage everyone to take a tour. Lydia, I'm happy to read in your testimony. You sort of putting on the record that some residents, in essence, our seniors, are risk becoming homeless when their homes are in serious disrepair. And I know, Kathy, I know you said, yeah, Sherelle would definitely be home nodding because she's affirming the need for a home repair, even outside of the work that we've done with BSRP. With that in mind, I want you to talk a little bit more, if you will, about what kind of requests that you get for seniors, particularly those who don't fall inside of the BSRP income eligibility guidelines, who need to make repairs to their homes. What's the request like coming in?
Well, for some of the cases that we've dealt with, for example, in row homes where there's been a fire or one of the homes in the row has fallen into such disrepair, things like front walls that are peeling off the townhouse or the row house, a lot of roofing questions. How do I get some assistance to fix my roof? For many seniors, their lives are constricted to the first or second floor, and if they have higher floors, they don't even go up there until the problem is so serious that the water has come down to the second or the first floor. For some, it's really a question of the heating system or the cooling system that has fallen into disrepair. Some of their equipment is 20, 30 years old, not efficient, higher cost. Those are real challenges for seniors. They're kind of caught, you know, do I invest, you know, the thousands of dollars to fix this system, or do I just Band-Aid it until I'm no longer here, whatever takes me out of this property. Another challenge that a lot of seniors have is making their house function for them in the state that they're in. So questions about putting bathrooms on the first floor, questions about access. Row homes are not particularly friendly for folks who have access challenges. So creating opportunities for folks, and referring them to services and opportunities to fix that so that they have an easier way in and out of their home. Some seniors are so isolated that they may spend weeks without any contact with folks outside of a small circle of caregivers or friends, et cetera. So that's some of the challenges we've seen.
I appreciate your response to that, particularly from an affordability perspective. When you're a senior, you're in the twilight years is what I like to often refer to them as, and you have a fixed income. Right, so everything is parsed out. And when you mention the issue of kinship care, one I know well because I'm a product of kinship care. Councilman Taubenberger, Mr. Chairman, they just didn't have the sexy name in 1972 when I was born, when my grandmother and grandfather decided to take care of me. They just were taking care of their granddaughter. Sure. So I'm definitely interested in figuring out how we can support seniors who find themselves, 30, 40 years after they've already raised children back, and they've got toddlers and children who are in elementary school now. In addition to that, I want you to flip your hat, and I want you to go back to the Rendell administration in Harrisburg. I don't think you all get enough credit for shepherding in this concept of aging in place. It was revolutionary thinking, Estelle Richmond, along with you, Lydia, when people were saying that we needed to focus on nursing home, and we were saying, no, we can be more efficient if we provided access and in-home care. The home-based care is also an economic development engine because we created jobs for home-based healthcare workers. Tell me what that looks like now in the city of Philadelphia. Are you getting more demand for people who are saying, I need in-home care, or are people trying to relocate to nursing homes?
No, I really do think that if every survey of seniors is, I want to stay in my home, I want to stay in my community. That's the top outcome. Point of correction, in the Rendell administration, I was in the banking department.
You were in banking, but you were a part of the team.
Yeah. Well, I think it was part of the concept, again, of what do people actually want, not what we want to give them. And when you really look at the cost, the difference between in-home care and nursing home care is huge. To, a cost 3 times as much to go into nursing home care than someone who can, in fact, and I'm sure that our colleague for PCA will be talking about that demand. And when you talk about kinship care, I was blessed with having my mother in my home for the last 3 years of her life, and it was so important for her to have supports around her to make sure that the quality of life was the best it could be given whatever was going on with her health-wise. And thankfully it was a very short period of time when she needed really intensive care, and we were able to provide it in the home. So she didn't have to go to an environment she didn't know. And that's also an issue with people with limited English proficiency. Their ability to express that, to promote that, is a challenge. And it's something that I personally am very, very invested in, because I think one of the realities of Philadelphia is a diversity of the languages being spoken by our seniors. And as many seniors begin to develop cognitive challenge, they may have worked for 30 years and managed English perfectly, right, but then they get to a point where their home language is their best way to communicate, the most accurate way to communicate what's going on with them.
Thank you for your testimony. And finally, Mr. Chairman, let me say to Ms. Califano, we've heard our council president and many others have echoed that the most affordable housing is the existing housing stock in the city of Philadelphia. And if you will, I want us to, everyone is thinking about sort of this revolutionary aspect of rebuild, right? The rebuilding of infrastructure and parks, rec centers, and libraries in the city of Philadelphia. But I want you, if you will, to talk about BSRP again. You mentioned it in your testimony, but also the other aspect of the maintenance of our existing housing stock.
So the Basic Systems Repair Program has proven extremely effective over time at allowing very low-income households to stay in their homes. It's also been instrumental in preserving housing stock for the next generations, because while people may choose to live on the first floor and not be aware of those structural issues, the cost then to repair for the next low-income household who may buy that house once that moves on is a cost that we bear. So expanding basic systems repair has been a critical part of the strategy for over 30 years in Philadelphia. And at times, Philadelphia has had various loan products, too, to serve households that are unable to participate, that are above the basic systems repair, but have a steady income and do have needs to address to keep their property up to code, as well as be a good neighbor to the neighbors on the block to know that they're maintaining their property. And those strategies, thank you, Councilwoman, and with Council President Clark, get to move into a new phase and expand these services as a loan product in Philadelphia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I said that was the last one, but this really is. Lydia struck on when she mentioned Department of Banking. So you remember that old hat and what you're doing now. And the issue of reverse mortgages is mentioned, an issue that we raised because we saw a lot of foreclosures taking place, particularly in districts like the 9th, where we have a high rate of home ownership. What is that like? I mean, Kathy, you can comment from your side because obviously we work from a budgetary perspective to address it. But Lydia, in your role, have you seen it?
We have seen it, and I think a lot of the gap is people's understanding and financial literacy around what a reverse mortgage is, how it works, and what the costs are associated with that product. I think because of the sense that folks have that, you know, I've got frozen money in my home that I need for a repair for the home, or I need for medical costs, or I need for, you know, something for my grandchildren or for my family members, that folks sometimes enter it a little bit too fast without really understanding what that product is. We haven't seen that much of it in the information referral area, but as I go around, yeah, I hear that from folks, and I also hear it from administrators of programs that saying, yeah, these folks came in with this issue, who do I go to? And so, of course, referring them to the banking department, referring them to other agencies. AARP has a lot of very good information about what it is and how to manage that product, and the challenges of folks taking that step back, because usually they need it now, and so they're willing to push aside concerns or issues or understanding because of the urgency of the need.
Kathy, you want to comment on that any?
You know, I think just the Department of Housing has tried to expand and adapt, as we hear from our housing counseling agency, and it is, it was a growing problem. HUD did make some changes that we think were positive, but we've been doing an ongoing project with the reinvestment fund to study the issue and to look at whether there are any discriminatory fair housing violation practices around who's being targeted and where they're being targeted, and what are the strategies we should deploy if those things are occurring. But we are serving people through our housing counseling to try and mitigate some of the problems.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, and Councilwoman Parker, thank you for your line of questioning. And just a comment, when it comes to grandchildren being raised by grandparents, whatever your initiative is, I'd like to help you and work with that. I think you have raised a very important factor here that many times is overlooked. And I think these folks need a lot of support, and the support, maybe in some cases they don't need the support, but the support should be available if they want it. Because I think it's something that's very helpful, that can help Philadelphia a great deal, something we should, so please count me in. Councilman Dodd.
Thank you, Chairman Taubenberger, and thank you, Vice Chairman Councilman Green, for bringing this to our attention. I have a question for the panel, and good morning. In your testimony, I think, Ms. Velez, you mentioned that 38.3% of the homes are owned free and clear, 33.4% are owned with a mortgage, and 26.5% rent, which means home ownership 73.5%, which is really strong, because it is citywide, it's 52, and there's only 3 cities out of the top 25 in the country that are over 50, so we're doing pretty well in that category. My question is, how does that compare to other cities like Philadelphia that have this issue, the home ownership?
We are a very, very high home owner-occupied city, as I've gone through and worked with different programs and met with colleagues across the nation. In some parts of the city, it's even higher than that, because this is a town with that ethic. of, it's better to own than to rent.
Right.
And for many seniors, that puts them in a really tough place where the housing costs, both for their ability to maintain the property and the associated property tax costs, et cetera, is a high percentage of their income, and that is a challenge.
And I have a couple other questions. I didn't realize it until I got here today that I'm in the senior category. Okay. But you say that over the age of 55? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, because, this is not just a Philadelphia problem, this is a national problem that we need to, I think, change our thinking about age. Because go back in time to 1900, the average age was 47. Every year from 1900 to 1950, the age grew, mortality 5 months. In 2000, the age was 75. And in 2017, great for women, they lived till 84 average, and men lived till 81. But we really haven't changed our guidelines, and what's going to happen is all economies, all governments are structured based on old systems, and they can't afford to handle the new retirement, and especially as Vice Chair Green put in his resolution, it was the New York Times, said that national population age 65 and over is going to grow 48 million to 79 million in the next 20 years. So I'm going to say we have 2 very productive council members here that are over 55. And so my question is, why are we not, as a country, raising the bar on retirement? Medicine is unbelievable today. People are living way longer than they lived 10 or 20 years ago. And yet, the retirement ages should be raised dramatically, just from a statistical standpoint.
Well, I think there are discussions about that. There are many, for example, it manifests in recruitment for senior centers. Many senior centers are now rethinking their name and taking senior out of it.
Right.
Because they're not getting, even, the 65 to 75 population is,
But here's my question on that. My question is, we have people that are 55, 60, 65, and 70. Most are way more productive than their parents were at those ages. Most have more knowledge. Most can be tremendous mentors. Most can be utilized in our economy in Philadelphia. And I think it would be great for this also to figure out, how do we utilize their skills? Because when people rest, they rust.
well, I think just to address that issue in terms of who we see in our job development area, which we saw over 1,200 people came to our offices looking for jobs, and we only serve folks who are over 55. And so they want to remain in the workforce, they want to remain in active, roles in different contexts. Yes, we're living longer, living healthier in the long term because of the advances in medicine and advances in wellness. That's in fact a conversation that's being had about what is a senior. And for many folks, it's not just the arbitrary, I'm 55, although I'll tell you that 2 days after I turned 65, I got my SEPTA pass.
Right.
But, I think a lot of folks are considering it like, why are you judging me because I'm 65 or I'm 70 even?
Right.
Because I think that the role, the medical and the societal engagement is so important. But yeah, I think you're right in the sense that folks want to rethink it, but not necessarily raise the Social Security retirement age or do other things that impact.
But I think part of the problem is that our grandparents worked until they died. Let's be realistic. That's what they did. Yet we expect to retire and expect society to help us in that retirement. And so that's okay. I don't have any plans, by the way, for the record, to ever retire, okay? But I would say this. I think that the bar has to be raised because we're living so much longer. And governments can't afford to support that whole system. Just can't happen. It's not going to happen. Last comment. I'm sitting here thinking about the population and the housing stock in Philadelphia. And most of our housing stock, I'm just going to be generic, is living room, dining room, kitchen, in that order, 2 or 3 bedrooms on the second floor. So most seniors have to climb steps. I would say to builders who are thinking about building, if they could maybe change that housing stock for future homes and put living room first, and then kitchen, and then dining room, with a dining room that's convertible to a first floor bedroom, seniors could stay in their homes, or in the reverse. In those townhomes, if we could come up with a fix that we flip the kitchen from the back to the middle room where it's a dining room and make the kitchen a master suite, Because when you're 75 or 80, you're probably not entertaining a ton of people and need a dining room. But this way they can stay in their home and the cost would be dramatically lower. Just for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just,
You're welcome,
I did want to
Councilman
clarify, all of our the affordable housing senior programs all have 65 as the age, not 55, so
Well,
they're.
that's better, but I'd
broader
like to see them
understanding.
go to 68 or 70. Because I know so many people that are 75 and productive. So, thank you.
Councilman Green.
Very brief, since Councilman Don brought up the point of age, I would be remiss and just reflect on yesterday. My father turned 85 yesterday. It's amazing considering that he's
God
the
bless.
youngest of the brothers. He has, my Uncle Jesse is turned 90 about a month ago, and then the middle brother, my Uncle Eddie, will be turning 88 in December 11th before me. But I really wanted to touch base on a comment, Lydia, you made regarding our high rate of home ownership. From my reflection, when I worked in the law department and I used to represent Office of Housing and Community Development, we had an even higher rate of home ownership. Do we have any numbers and data that show for seniors the loss of housing? Because it seems like with the growth of the population, and a lot of seniors have, retired, they own their own homes, but they've been also losing their homes through foreclosures. Councilman Parker brought up reverse mortgages. Do we have any data that focuses just on with the home ownership rate, which has been going down, although still high compared to many other cities, it has been going down. But of that loss percentage, how much is that attributable to senior-owned properties?
I haven't seen those numbers, but
Okay.
I will say there's another factor, and that is that Philadelphia is experiencing an in-migration of folks from the suburbs back into the city because they're looking for a quality of life, and many of those seniors have much more disposable income. And, I don't think, this is just my instinct, I think most of them are coming in to ownership of co-ops, et cetera, as opposed to renting. But there has been an in-migration in Philadelphia, and it has everything to do with what you're looking for as a quality of life in your next phase. As in Spanish, old age is really called the third age. And so the concept that you are in another age, another experience, another set of requirements, I think is very accurate for some of the folks that I've had contact with who have in fact said, living in the burbs and having to depend on the car is not the kind of life I want. I want to be in an urban setting, and I want to be able to walk to the doctor, walk to the cafe, walk to the
Very
theater,
good.
walk to entertainment.
It's very, very good. Councilman Green, I would like to have you share with the committee what your father and his brothers, your uncles, eat in the morning for breakfast to get that long and healthy livelihood. I mean, life. I mean, that's fantastic. I'd like that to be known. That's some work we can do here.
Based on your educational training as an agronomist, but the fact growing up on a farm,
That's
getting up at the
healthy.
crack of dawn, working on the farm before you go
Healthy
to
stuff.
school, I think that added to long life.
Thank you for sharing. As someone who is 64 years old and aspire at least to get deep into my 80s, maybe 90s, I'd like to know as much as possible about this. So, and I also think it's a responsibility of this committee to share that kind of information with all. So thank you very much. And Councilman Dom, on your point, and a little bit of history, how the federal governments have, things have to change or must change, but that's not a discussion for this committee. But many people probably are not aware that the Social Security system was actually based on the German system, which was put in place by Otto von Bismarck. One of the things he did, and probably lost to history, but our system is based on that. And he did that in the 1880s. But for your information, he went to his ministers, because this was all a new concept back then. He said, I want to know when the average German dies. And the answer was 59 years old. So he said, very good, very good. So we'll start our program at 62, hoping that many, do not make it. But, things have changed. He was a smart businessman. Yeah, that's true, 1880s. So it is all very, very interesting. And I think we have to learn from things that are going well and things that are not going well. So, but once again, that greater concept is not our point. I do have a couple questions actually, for Ms. Hernandez-Valiz. And it's something that I know a bit about because I'm blessed that my parents taught me another language. You write that, or you said in your notes that 7.6% of households are linguistically isolated. In a city as diverse as Philadelphia, I'm a little concerned on how that can happen and what languages are those, because I can see that happening. And I've known friends of my parents who, if they didn't have someone that spoke German around, it could be difficult. How can that happen here, and how can we address it? Because I think it's a simple answer if we could do it.
Probably there are enclaves that either through migration or through, an example is the Bhutanese migration into Philadelphia, a very specific group of and community that has come here. And another example is the Cambodian Vietnamese communities that arrived here in the 70s, and now their folks are getting older. And so I draw from my own experience with some of my family members who lived in a totally linguistic shell within New York City and shopped at stores where they spoke Spanish, worked at places where they spoke Spanish, had the newspaper, had some television, not a lot, but so yes, you can in fact in a large city live in a bubble where the need to translate and interact with systems is handled either by your grandchildren. I can't tell you the times from my early years in my public school, I was pulled out of class to translate for adults. But yes, that's possible, and part of the issue is how to integrate the community-based honest brokers who are interacting with different systems to make sure they get information out to those communities.
Because one of the great things of Philadelphia is very much its diversity, and there have to be people in all age groups that know most every language. I wouldn't say everyone, but almost all languages known to man right here in this city. So having them connect with the right people and not have that isolation, I think is important.
But remember, for many of these communities, the structures that would have supported their seniors were blown away because they went from a conflict area to a refugee camp to the United States. What would have normally happened in their community was totally destroyed by that experience. And so sometimes it's difficult to recreate it in another environment, although there are many, many efforts to do that through CMAC and other community-based organizations, Congresso. There are a lot of community-based organizations that are reaching out to folks and trying to make sure that no one is left isolated.
If there's anything the role of this committee can do, or I can do personally, please count on me, because I would have, as a fellow human being, it would be awful for someone who can't get the services they need simply because they don't know who to ask or how to speak a certain language. And once again, I think the resources in the city are deep enough that we should be able to come up with someone that can speak for the Bhutanese, the Cambodians, or even if it's some Spanish or even German or French.
I know. When we translated our food resource guide, we had to include Russian and two types of Cantonese and Mandarin Chinese, and Vietnamese and Korean, and Spanish and Creole French and West African languages, because that's who's in the city, and that's who's getting old in the city.
All right. Well, I'll be happy to help, or if you think legislation comes to the answer. I do have another question for either you or Ms. Califano, and that would be as follows. Does the city or does your office have a position on reverse mortgages for seniors? Pro or con, or no comment at all?
I think that, it is a very challenging financial instrument, and where it became problematic is sometimes a member of the household was just signing the mortgage but not keeping putting the other family members on the deeds. So the husband dies and the wife had no access to that property, could be evicted by the bank. That would be very sad if that happened. It was happening. So there were things that HUD has done to change the requirement. You do have to participate in housing counseling, but that housing counseling does not have to be a HUD certified housing counseling. So a lot of lenders had a more of a pro forma. So I think that the housing counseling agencies have tried to step up, and through our legal service agencies to help seniors who have gotten into that complex financial product to try and assess whether it is the right product and who it's appropriate for.
Could you state for the record if there is a place in a location, a zip code or a ward or division, where there is a high concentration of reverse mortgages? Do you know of any?
I can't name it now, but I can provide you with, we can look at where the reverse mortgages are in the city and ones that have gone into foreclosure and provide that to you. I just don't have it accessible now, but it is information that we can access for you.
Would like that. I think it's important to know, and that way we even have a sense how important, or maybe maybe the numbers are not as high as we think of folks with reverse mortgages.
Yep.
Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a comment on reverse mortgages. Coming from a real estate background, I'd say it's a last resort, and we should try to make sure that everyone who's taking one understands what they're getting into. Because 99.9% of the time, they are a nightmare, a reverse mortgage, a nightmare. And we should not be encouraging them. They're the last resort by far. Usually the interest rate is higher, and usually the lender is getting a better return in exchange for the risk. So would not be something we would recommend, in my opinion.
I agree.
Oh, Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just sort of point of information for the record. You know, we held a hearing, and like we've been since we arrived in this body, had a laser-like focus on it. So, Councilman Dom, just from a professional real estate perspective, I appreciate you noting for the record, you know, the potential misuse and the dangers of the product. In addition to that, while I know we may not have the study in front of us, I think your question, Councilman Taubenberger, was very much appropriate, because in Philadelphia, we've seen reverse mortgages targeted to our neighborhoods that have some of the higher rates of home ownership, i.e. Councilman Green was saying, yes, middle neighborhoods. So those middle neighborhoods, not where people are rich, where they're usually making like a nickel or a dollar over the income guidelines, where they are, Councilman Dom, you know how I feel about this, paying their property taxes, even if they're making payment agreements, but they are targeting this product in those particular communities. So I thank you, Councilman, for raising our awareness on it. And Councilman Taubenberger, thank you for, you know, acknowledging that we have to pay attention to this product in our city. Because usually what happens is the children or others who live in the household with the seniors who are accustomed to taking care of themselves and not having a child involved in their affairs, they've usually gotten a product, Councilman Dom, thinking, well, you know, I've taken a financial burden off of my shoulders and that of my children, without thinking exactly about what you described, which is the end game that usually ends up wealth being taken from the family. So thank you so very much for noting that for the record.
Ms. Califano, thank you, and Ms. Hernandez-Veliz, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
Oh, but hold on, don't go.
I just want to make one more statement on the House and follow up with Councilwoman Parker's comments. It's clear in the United States the #1 wealth generator is owning your own home. And so these reverse mortgages take that wealth from families that want to pass that on generationally, and that's the danger. Thank you.
And actually, if I could also make an additional comment, for a lot of reasons, most because of our federal tax code, I think America has one of the highest percentage of home ownership anywhere in the world. And I think that's something to be applauded. It's much higher than in Europe and other places. So oh yeah. Well, because you don't get a tax deferment in Europe. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, I'm not for that. Thank you both very, very, very much. Mr. Wright, will you call the next panel, please?
Second panel, Tina Schlossberg, Mark Myers, and Bob Thiel.
And please start in any order that the three of you would like. And if we could, we'd like to hear all your testimony and then have questions, if that's okay with the committee. Councilman, is that good? Wait. Okay.
I'll go for it. Good morning. I want to thank Councilman Taubenberger and Councilman Green and the remainder of members of City Council for holding these hearings and for inviting me to testify today regarding Resolution 170375. My name is Dina Schlossberg, and I am the Deputy Director and Senior Attorney for Multifamily Housing at Regional Housing Legal Services. So I think I might be the lawyer of the group, although Lydia's there, I think, as well. Regional Housing is a nonprofit organization that provides legal representation to nonprofits developing affordable housing and community development, or working to revitalize communities. Regional Housing provides a full range of legal services for free on acquisition, financing, leasing, organizational issues to nonprofit, helping with partnerships, and in general providing technical assistance to nonprofits who are engaged in the development or the preservation of affordable housing. Regional Housing is also active on numerous policy and programmatic initiatives here in Philadelphia and statewide. We're a statewide program, and our principal office is located in Glenside, Pennsylvania. We also have a small office in Philadelphia, and it's housed at Community Legal Services. We work closely with other public interest nonprofit organizations to address systematic problems that affect the housing needs of low-income Philadelphians. So we work with the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, PACDC, the Housing Alliance, and our fellow nonprofit legal aid organizations, Community Legal Services and Philadelphia Legal Assistance. For over 40 years, Regional Housing has been representing nonprofit organizations involved in the development and preservation of affordable housing. So we have a wide depth of knowledge and a wide history of knowledge. And I think that because also our program is statewide, our staff is recognized nationally for its commitment to excellence and for its deep knowledge of affordable housing programs and policies. And I'd be happy to talk about some of the things that we're seeing in other parts of the state as well as nationally if you're interested. My focus this morning really wanted to talk about as you can see, the breadth of need in the city of Philadelphia is vast, and there is a strong component that is about preserving affordable housing for homeowners. My focus this morning really is on the need for the preservation and the increase of rental housing, and I'll explain why. We serve nonprofit organizations that have a mission to serve the lowest income of elderly Philadelphians. The need for safe and secure affordable housing for low-income Philadelphians is great, but particularly acute for the very lowest income seniors. Pennsylvania has the fourth highest concentration of seniors of any state in the nation, and Philadelphia is home to the largest population of seniors among any of the major U.S. cities. According to a report prepared by the Pew Charitable Trust, almost 580,000 seniors age 65 and above live in the Philadelphia region, and of these, about 193,000 live in the Philadelphia city. About 1/3 of the nation's seniors are low income and live at below 200% of the federal poverty level, meaning they are living on an annual income of no more than $22,000. In Philadelphia, this number is even more dire, with about 33,000 senior citizens, individuals living at or below 100% of the federal poverty level, or existing on a mere $11,000 per year. That's less than $1,000 a month to cover all of the monthly needs of food, housing, transportation, and other fundamentals of sustaining needs. Among the Philadelphia elderly, and this is really where a lot of my office has its focus, is on deep poverty, meaning a single person living on no more than $5,700 per year. This number of adult seniors living in deep poverty has increased dramatically across the country, actually, and for numbers that people are really beginning to look at, including what's happened to what people's capacity to get some kind of retirement through the workforce. According to research conducted by the Philadelphia Corporation for Aging, as of 2013, Philadelphia had approximately 14,500 seniors living in deep poverty. The need for affordable housing is a national phenomenon and is growing. As reported in the HUD Worst Case Housing Needs 2017 report to Congress, only 66 affordable housing units exist for every 100 extremely low-income renters. Because some of these units are occupied by persons with higher incomes, nationally, only 38 affordable units are available for occupancy for every 100 extremely low-income renters. In the same Worst Case Housing Needs 2017 report to Congress, indicated that only one half of these units are actually physically adequate for occupancy, meaning that some of the others, while available, are certainly not quality and not up to housing code. During 2015, nationally, 1.85 million elderly renters had worst-case housing needs, meaning they are very low-income renters who did not receive governmental assistance and who paid more than one-half of their income for rent. This is an increase of over 382,000 elderly individuals since last reported in 2013. There's a myth that low-income seniors are adequately supported by subsidized housing, yet low-income seniors often fail to secure the assistance that they may need, and there simply isn't enough of it. A Harvard study found in 2011 that 3.9 million households 62 and older had very low incomes, at or below 50% of the area median, but only 36% benefited from assistance. The same worst-case housing needs report from HUD indicated that 42% of the Philadelphia Metro's very low-income renters, making less than 50% of the area's median income, qualify as worst-case housing needs. Here in Philadelphia, the housing need, especially for seniors, is compromised by the immense growth of interest in rental housing for middle and upper-income renters. According to a report issued this year by the Federal Reserve, the need for affordable housing was made more severe by the loss of affordable units, and I think that's something that the city has to look at dramatically. Overall, Philadelphia lost a total of over 23,000 low-cost rental units, meaning units that would naturally rent for $750 a month or less per month. The number of affordable rental units available now for every 100 lower-income rental households fell from 82 to 68 between 2005 and 2014. In Philadelphia, for the lowest income renters, there are just 33 affordable and available units per 100 renter households in 2014. There's a dire need to increase and preserve the supply of affordable housing and to better serve the housing needs of Philadelphia's low-income and extremely low-income senior population. We represent, I'll just tell you anecdotally, I represent Presby's Inspired Life, New Cortland Elder Services, Center in the Park, Winfield Overbrook Revitalization Corporation. We also represent Catholic Social Services and a myriad of other nonprofit providers of affordable housing for seniors, and it's not uncommon to have wait lists of 200 to 500 per building. The problem to address the needs of extremely low-income seniors in the city of Philadelphia requires a multifaceted approach, including increasing the supply of affordable housing and preserving the existing supply. I know this has also been a goal of City Council, and particularly City Council President Darrell Clark. I hope today to be able to help identify the need for more affordable senior housing, and I'm happy to share with you some ideas and some visions that we've seen from other parts of the country and parts around the state on other ways to bring in dollars for affordable housing, as well as other models that are being used to kind of maximize affordable housing opportunities. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I want to thank Councilman Green and the rest of the committee for holding these hearings as we work together to address this growing need.
Good morning. My name is Bob Thiel. I'm the Government Affairs Manager for New Cortland Senior Services, a nonprofit provider of affordable housing, healthcare, and supportive services for seniors in Philadelphia. On behalf of Pam Amarella, Vice President of Government Affairs for New Cortland, I would like to thank members of this committee, particularly Councilman Green, for the opportunity to provide testimony on this topic, which is critical to the health and welfare of seniors in the city. As evidenced by this hearing, the need for high-quality, affordable senior housing is tremendous and growing. The growth of the 65-plus population, as well as increased housing costs, has combined to stretch affordable senior housing waiting lists in the city. Today, a senior can wait on a list for years before it's their turn to move in. This perpetual limbo can make life for seniors living on a fixed income precarious. In addition, seniors living in homes that are unsuitable for their unique needs are at greater risk of preventable and costly institutionalizations in skilled nursing facilities. To combat this issue, New Cortland has laid out a bold plan to develop 2,000 affordable senior housing units in Philadelphia in 15 years. We have also created a preference on our waiting list for seniors that are eligible for the nursing home transition program or in need of supportive services, which helps prevent unnecessary nursing home placements. Through this initiative, we will match our clients' needs by enabling them to age in place with dignity and support, while also saving Pennsylvania millions of tax dollars, as long-term community-based care promoted by this housing plan costs about half of the institutional care provided in skilled nursing facilities. By planning to invest in excess of $500 million in the community through this 15-year plan, $120 million of our own money, New Cortland plans to significantly increase the city's total affordable senior housing stock. As we move forward, we will continue to call upon the city and the state for support and funding to make this a reality. Thank you for your work, and thank you again for the opportunity to present on this topic.
Good morning. My name is Mark Myers. I am the Director of Housing at the Philadelphia Corporation for Aging. On behalf of PCA, I want to thank Chairman Taubenberger for hosting this hearing, Councilman Green for introducing this hearing, and to the members of the Aging Committee for focusing on this very important topic. As you may know, PCA is the state-designed area agency on aging, responsible for coordinating and administering federal, state, and local funds for older Philadelphians. PCA provides a wide range of services to the city's elderly, from funding senior centers, alleviating older adult abuse, ensuring nutritious congregate and homebound meals, and we provide much-needed housing repairs, modifications, and other services. Last fiscal year, PCA provided housing services to over 1,160 consumers, more than any other city program. Additionally, requests for housing information to our PCA helpline accounts for the highest volume of calls we receive every year. Although our funding is limited, PCA's housing department provides a variety of home repairs and modifications to help make older Philadelphians' homes safer, more secure, and more accessible. Through the Senior Housing Assistance Repair Program, or SHARP, minor home repairs and modifications are provided to low-income Philadelphia homeowners aged 60 and older. Depending on income, SHARP services may be offered at no charge or on a cost-sharing sliding scale. Often minor repairs to doors and stairs, as well as adaptations such as tub seats and grab bars, provide much-needed assistance to the consumers that we serve. Housing is one of the key pillars necessary to foster neighborhood stabilization and enable seniors to successfully age in place. Seniors who do not have safe and accessible housing are at significantly greater risk of falls and other health concerns, which can lead to costly hospitalizations, institutionalization, and frequent ER visits. In addition to costly housing challenges, older Philadelphians also struggle with poverty. Philadelphia has the highest poverty rate among the nation's 10 largest cities. 42% of those 65 and older are living at 200% of the poverty level. Additionally, almost 5% of women and 4% of men in Philadelphia over 65 are living in deep poverty, preventing many senior homeowners from being able to maintain their homes due to costly repairs. PCA has a 40-plus year history in providing crucial housing services. We think it is important to provide the following facts at today's hearing. In the next 10 years, we expect to see a significant increase in the number of older adults ages 60 to 74, especially among minority elderly. Many of these folks are going to need assistance with maintaining their homes and getting needed repairs that are crucial to keeping them in their home. 70% of older Philadelphians who own their own home, 25% rent, and the rest are in various types of alternative housing. The majority of older Philadelphians would like to remain in their current home for 10 years or more. Many because they see no alternative choice, and second, they are very attached to their neighborhoods. If there were a low-income housing option in their neighborhood, they would be very interested in moving. About 25% of older adults say that they will move in 5 years. Of those, almost half are looking for affordable senior housing. Many seniors report needing repairs to their roofs, plumbing, and heating and cooling systems. Over a quarter of all older Philadelphians report some type of home repair need. The reason these repairs have not been made may in part be explained by the fact that almost 40% report that housing costs were somewhat to very difficult to meet. Given the increasing needs of Philadelphia's most vulnerable population, PCA is seeking your assistance in meeting these housing challenges. With limited funding options, several years of flat funding, and a long waiting list for those consumers we serve through our SHARP program, the demand for housing service is ever growing. We encourage all city-managed organizations and nonprofits throughout the city that provide housing services to work together collaboratively to address these needs and to develop and seek out more alternatives so Philadelphia seniors aren't forced into nursing homes or simply settle for what's available, but be provided with choices that can help them thrive in their communities with dignity and affordability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Myers. Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank all of you for your testimony this morning. First, I want to reflect on both the testimony of Ms. Schlossberg as well as Mr. Myers and the fact that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has the 4th largest senior population in the nation, and the city of Philadelphia is the largest of all major cities with that size of senior population. I think it's something very important that many people I don't think realize. So I'm curious in reference to Ms. Schlossberg, what trends you see in other cities in reference to how people are dealing with senior housing, especially in reference to financing and structure projects, especially considering your years of legal experience in this regard.
Thank you for your question. Yes, the need for senior housing is pretty rapid and it's pretty extreme throughout the state of Pennsylvania, but because of the population density in Philadelphia and obviously the long history of home ownership and people then needing to, and the deep poverty, the need is pretty severe here. What we are seeing, and I think New Cortland does some, is part of the model that New Cortland uses, which is to have the senior housing be co-located with other services. And the purpose of that is to allow seniors to age in place without needing, so that they get some of the other proper needs, daily needs met. So for instance, I would encourage members of this committee to look at the North Penn Commons project that's in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And that project was,
can you restate that?
It's called North Penn Commons, and it's the developer was Advanced Living Community Services, which is a nonprofit that's long-standing provider of senior housing in Montgomery County. And in that case, that project, North Penn Commons, is a collaboration, a co-location of a senior center, a food security program called Manna on Main Street, and advanced living, and the whole building ties into the YMCA. So it was a way to also kind of bolster the attendance and the kind of the community access to the YMCA. It provides a feeding program so that the Manna on Main Street, which was intended to feed low-income people or people who needed access to food in the community, also allows the members who live in that building to go down and get food on a daily basis, and because there's also a doctor's office now on the first floor. So we're seeing more and more of an attempt to try to collaborate, particularly in communities where funding sources, grant or foundation funding may be funding 3 or 4 or 5 ancillary organizations, and trying to kind of bring them together in some aspects so that there's an economy of scale that's serving the seniors while you're also serving the organizations that serve the seniors. So in that particular project at North Penn Commons, the idea was brought together by the North Penn Foundation, which now I think has a new name. And that was able to bring in other foundation funding as well. So I think that that's one model that we're beginning to see. Another model that we're beginning to see is also for seniors. An interesting kind of niche market is seniors who have adult children with developmental or physical disabilities who are unable to leave their homes, that are not safe for them because they have no place for their children to go. So we're beginning to see modeling of housing where that's being developed for the younger generation, now we're now 30s, 40s, and 50s, so that they can live independently while the parents can live somewhere either on the same campus or in a nearby campus. So trying to address sort of the family aspect and the family need. And those are just 2 models. There's a third model that we're representing on granny cottages, where, now this doesn't really work in places like the city, but it does work in more rural environments where you would literally have a cottage on your property where your mother, grandmother would live. It's about 400, 500 square feet, owned by the Center on Corporation on Aging in that particular jurisdictions. And it's sort of a 3-way contract between the Department of Aging, the family, and the grandmother, mother, whoever lives in the building, where there's some support given by the family member and some support given by the Corporation on Aging. So that's a different model that probably wouldn't work in Philadelphia, but it's somewhat akin to the model of shared housing that, other people were discussing. I could go on. We're also seeing kinship here. There is Mission. I would encourage people to maybe invite in Mission First Housing, who I think Councilman Green knows, where they are doing a grandparent and grandchildren project in Washington, D.C. And there has been a strong interest in trying to develop that kind of housing model here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, those are all very interesting ideas. And as you were talking about co-locating multiple services, like you talked about the North Penn project, and is there an ability to do a combination of senior housing and retail, in the sense of, could you, and it escaped me a little bit, but can you do a project for low-income housing tax credits for the housing for seniors, combining that with new market tax credits for retail or some type of commercial use?
All the time. You just have to condo the building. So now we're getting in like real estate weeds, but yeah, you just have to condo the building.
Because that's, to me, a concept that provides.
That's what New Cortland does. That's what Project Home does.
Transition to New Cortland, your 10,000 units. So that's a good segue.
Yeah, we are actually doing that. One of our developments in northwest Philadelphia, 3232 Henry Avenue, is the former EPI site, the Eastern Pennsylvania Psychiatric Institute.
Oh, yeah.
So we bought that around 2.5 years ago.
That's on Henry Avenue?
Henry Avenue, 3232 Henry Avenue.
Okay, gotcha.
Right across from Aberystwyth Home. So we're doing that project, and you guys are working with us. So actually a part of that is going to be retail. So we're going to have senior housing, senior health care through a life center, and there's going to be around 6,000 square foot of retail. There's a lot of retail going in at that area, so we're trying to make it focus more towards medical, maybe a dialysis center or urgent care, so we're kind of going that route, but that's something we do. Yeah. We use new market tax credits, we applied for RCAT, applied for DHCD money as well, so we kind of mix all those funding sources together. So you'll see that at that development once it's done.
Because when Dina, you were talking earlier, it made me think of how do you find a way of, okay, we need housing, but we also need some way to help subsidize. Sometimes we may need some gap filling beyond the low-income housing tax credits, but then the community may need some type of commercial use, and that could be the first floor, and that would be the new market tax credit come in.
Yep, that's exactly what we're doing. You'll see that at Henry Avenue as we develop that.
And then also, in your testimony, you talk about 2,000 units over 15 years.
Yes.
And this is in addition to the current number of units you already have in the city.
It would be 2,000 is our goal. Right now, we have around 300 with around 142 kind of in construction right now. So that's the long-term goal. We're doing that through separate campuses. We have Allegheny has around 105 right now.
Familiar with that.
And Germantown has around over 200, around 200. But then we're also starting to do the scattered site.
You should talk about that project.
Yeah, the scattered site is what we're doing as well. Around Northeast Philadelphia, one of our projects is at St. Bart's. It's at 5600 Jackson Street. It was a former Catholic school. Jackson and Harbison, Councilman Taubenberger knows it. So we're doing that there, and we're doing that life center with a smaller model with eventually 142 senior housing units. But also in that area, and this goes with what Councilman Don was saying, there's a lot of single-story, one-story row houses around there. They're around 600 to 700 square feet. So we're buying them and then using them and converting them into an affordable senior housing units. And they're set up just like Councilman Dodd was saying. You walk in, and the kitchen's right there, the living room's right there, and then we have the bedroom in the back with a nice-sized bathroom and everything like that. So our goal is that right now we obtain over 40. Our goal is to do around 200 of them in that area because it's such a huge need. And the way it works out financially, it helps us. It's way cheaper for us to buy these little houses for 70, 80,000, throw 40,000 into it, as compared to build like a St. Bart's or the EPI site. You're looking at almost 300,000 per unit to kind of get something like that going.
So your concept is creating a village or community concept, buying scatter sites, buy them for 70, 80, put in 40, 50, make them adaptable for seniors, and you do it in a cluster area so you have other services. And so how many units do you plan on doing per year?
The goal is to do 200. So right now we have around 40, so we're going to try to do around 50 a year for the next 4 years.
Okay. And then how are you deciding which areas you're going to cluster those type of services.
Well,
in
we're
this
just
scarce
doing
site?
this now in Northeast Philly, so we're trying to keep it by that Life Center, so the people who live in those units, the scattered site, will be able to utilize the Life Center, which is our medical model for all-inclusive care. So they'll be able to go there and back and forth and be able to use that center.
And then for existing locations, so I know New Cortland location on off Allegheny,
Yes.
and then Germantown Home, and then also the unit you built in the Germantown Home campus.
Yes.
Would you build other scattered sites around either Allegheny or Germantown Home to build on that existing development?
Right now, the model is based around these single-story, 600-square-foot houses. So if there was other places like that around there, I'm sure our leadership team would kind of look at that as well. So, but around North Philly, around our Allegheny campus, you've been there. There's not too many of those kind of sites around there, so it's kind of harder. We want to keep with the single story, so it's easy for them to kind of age in place and be safe at the same time.
And so have you been now having conversation with the district council members as you grow your network? When you're talking, I mean, 2,000 is a lot of units.
Yes.
So are you talking to the district councilpersons and letting them know about, okay, these are the areas that we're looking to develop in terms
Yes.
of scarce sites? And also they may have a knowledge of locations or parcels in their districts that may be amenable to both the Life Center as well as scattered sites around.
Yes, sir. It's one of the first things we do as soon as we get in there is the Councilman Heenan was part of our Lidenfield property that we bought, so we're working with him. Councilman Sanchez is the St. Bart's district person. So, yeah, so that's the first thing we do. And we hear that a lot from a lot of our council people who come in. What about this property? Maybe check out this property. So, we're always in the land to look. So right now, if we built everything that we have in the pipeline, that would get us to around 1,000 units. So we still have a ways to go to get there. Yeah, so.
Okay, good. And then finally, for Mr. Myers, I know the PCA is kind of unique compared to other entities around the Commonwealth where the dollars come from the state to the county office assistants as opposed to a nonprofit like PCA. So my question is, what are some of the trends you're seeing at the state level in reference to funding for our seniors? I know we are currently waiting, I won't say with bated breath because we may not make it, for a state budget, but what are some of the things you're seeing in reference to funding considering the large number of seniors we have in the Commonwealth compared to the nation?
Currently, we serve, and this speaks a little bit to Councilwoman Parker's statements earlier. We serve about over 10,000 people in our waiver program, and what that waiver program is the Department of Aging's nursing home diversion dollars that go to support those consumers that are nursing home lookalikes, and we use those dollars to provide supportive services to them in their homes. As you may know, the managed care organizations are going to be moving in July of 2018, and they're going to be managing those dollars, and then PCA will work collaboratively with those MCOs to serve those consumers, along with maybe some other service coordination entities. The long-term care aspect of that gets a little bit out of my purview. That's actually one of the long-term care programs at PCA. I'm in the housing department, but I have been at PCA for about 27 years. I've been in 7 different positions there, so I do know a little bit of the lay of the land there after devoting most of my career to aging services. So these housing needs are certainly very important to me.
Okay. So outside, and I actually have resolution for hearings on the managed long-term care transitions, which we'll see. I know the Southwest region, I think, is the first region, then it's going to move across the Commonwealth. But outside just the difference in how funding is provided, do you see any other changes? I know there's been discussion in reference to the lottery system off and on over the years, but have you seen any other information that you may hear from within PCA or what may be happening at the state level regarding funding for senior housing?
No, I haven't seen that yet. The dollars that we use for the SHARP program are the aging block grant funds that come through the AAA to us. And we've been setting aside some of those dollars for, I think, the last 4 years approximately to provide the SHARP program and to provide those minor repairs and adaptations that we do in consumers' homes. I have been seeing a growing need for those. Our waiting list right now stands at about 450 folks. And generally it takes from point of entry to service approximately a year for a consumer to get those housing services. For the waiver program, the consumers I mentioned earlier, we do work for those consumers as well. We can put in stair glides, wheelchair lifts, we can do half bathrooms on the first floor. We can modify the home in order to serve the needs of those consumers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Green. Just very, very quickly, we do have an international guest here. He is a city councilman from the city of Taubenberger, which is in the Indian state of Kerala. He comes as a guest of Vincent Emmanuel and Mr. Kennedy Peter. Would you please rise and be recognized by us? Thank you for coming, and I certainly would like to have a word with you after the hearing if that is possible. I do want to say it does fit into the hearing to a degree. The state of Kerala is home. There are many Philadelphians that trace their origins to the state of Kerala. They speak a language known as well as English, but Malayalis. And so we have a very vibrant group here in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia region, and it's something we talked about earlier, about the diversity of this city. And here we have Councilman Kennedy Peter actually here. At this moment, Councilman Don, please.
Thank you, Chairman Taubenberger, and good morning, still morning here. Two questions. One is, have we looked at, when you mentioned this with the housing you're doing in Northeast Philadelphia, have we looked at the option of converting existing row homes that are 2 stories and flipping the kitchen to the dining room and putting a bedroom where the kitchen is as an adaptive reuse of the space and not having people climb the steps? Because most of my experience with seniors, including my own family, is most of the issues occur when they fall. And once they fall, including my mother recently, it's a tremendous downhill situation. So if we can eliminate those steps, they stay in their house. The adaptive reuse can't be expensive because below you can get to the plumbing below. You have a crawl space or a basement, and just flipping it, and they don't really need a dining room at that age. They could have like a great room. Have we looked at that as an option? Either one.
We had, depending on the consumer situation, it depends on where we end up making the modification. So we have, if the consumer's confined to the second floor, we've been able to make modifications up there. If they're confined to the first floor, we can do those type of adaptations. So we could put a bathroom in the first floor. We can move the kitchen around. We've moved kitchens from the back of the house to the middle of the house, to the dining room area. One of the big problems that we encounter is the washer and dryer. They're all in the basements, and seniors can't get into the basement oftentimes, and we've looked at ways of moving that around. We recently came across a case where a consumer didn't have basement stairs. She had a ladder, and she was going up and down the stairs to do her wash via a ladder. So we were able to get in there right away and address that.
But you do have those combo units now that are under the counter. They wash and dry, the LGs. They're very efficient.
Yes, yes.
So here's one thought. We have 35 or 38% of these homes with no mortgage. Maybe we made a relationship with a bank that would lend them the $15,000 or $20,000 to convert. They could stay in their home. It would be a much less expensive option than other alternatives they have. Just a thought for you to think about. Second question, I guess, is from Ms. Schlossberg. I want to make sure I understand the numbers. We have a city of 1,560,000 people, and in your testimony, there's 193,000 that are seniors, I guess, and that's over the age of 65. And that represents 12.3% of our population. Of those seniors, 1/3 are low income, if I'm reading your testimony correctly.
Of the region, the greater Philadelphia region, 1/3 are seniors. So the number that I thought was more important here was that 33,000 are living in poverty.
How many of the people in the city, 193,000, are actually in poverty, do you know, or low income?
The percentage of the number or the raw numbers?
Either one.
I don't remember the numbers, but the overall poverty rate in Philadelphia is at 25.9%.
Well, I know the overall poverty is 26. I'm trying to figure out of the 193,000 that live in Philadelphia, of the seniors, you say the region's 1/3. Do you have any idea how many are in the city? Is that 1/3 also, or is that a different number?
I don't remember. I'd have to look I don't remember
Okay.
the
I
actual
believe it's around a
percentage.
third.
It's about a third.
It's about a
It is
third.
about a third,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's about 64,000 roughly is a third. So this is my question. Our overall population, 26% are in poverty. Seniors are 33%. So the delta is 7 points. So we need to deal with this, but the underlying problem of overall poverty is probably where the real cure has to occur. Because if we can lower that dramatically, we're going to lower this overall senior problem also. Because it doesn't, like, most people probably are in poverty before, and then they become a senior, they're still in poverty. There's a small delta, which is 7-point difference, that fall into, I think, poverty when they become seniors, if I'm reading your statistics correctly.
I think I understand what you're saying. Some of that can be addressed, of course, with an economic gain for the members, fall into that delta. Increasingly, those who fall into poverty as they become older are either the result of a loss of income and they're not going to get another job, or physical disability, or or mental health issues. So I'm not sure, and not having, and kind of the loss of kind of a safety net of Social Security that's greater
Right.
than.
But that's what's adding to the 7%. If they're in poverty before, that's your 26 base. When they get to that age, it's just adding some
Right, that's
points.
right. That's right.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Don. Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank each of you for being here. Have to give just a huge special thanks to Holly, Mark, and Gail. I've been wearing you all out for so long between Harrisburg and here, and you all are sort of our first line of defense on the ground, because we call you not with anything just for our constituents, but when you are serving as a caregiver. I was for my grandfather in 2005. And, I was just elected. And I remember a friend telling me, I know of a wonderful place that would take very good care of your grandfather, Sherelle, because if you're going to be commuting back and forth to Harrisburg, there's no way you're going to be able to take care of Daddy at home. And, my grandmother was from North Carolina, and South Carolina, actually, and I said to my friend, she would reach down from the heavens and touch me on my shoulder. If I said, because of my career, I couldn't find a way to make it work for my grandfather in my house, and we called you all, and you all helped us work that out. So I just always have to give a special thanks to you, and we've helped other people to do the same. With that being said, I want to you to sort of shift and tell me what you think about this. This week, we're in the Northeast in my district. We're at Jardel Recreation Center. Monty is there with us from CLS. We're talking about deeds, estates, home ownership, reverse mortgages, and all of a sudden this issue comes up. Child tries to get parent to give power of attorney and ownership of the house over to the child. Housing Counseling Agency assists with this process, but they detect something is occurring in the midst of this relationship, and so they wait until the child leaves the room, and they see the fear in the parent's face that this is not something that the parent really wants to do. It's almost as if the parent is being forced to sign over ownership and or power. It was very unnerving to hear this, but I know it happens more frequently than we probably give attention to. And Monty from CLS, as usual, said, well, I want everybody to look at Councilwoman Parker and tell her that we used to have a program called a Rep Payee program, where seniors who receive Social Security, I know they do this for veterans, had an entity that was responsible for taking care of that kind of business. And so with that being said, I said, well, wait, I needed to ask you, is that something that we see a challenge with? Do you, PCA, have a staff that does that? And what is that demand like? Are you even familiar with it? I know that's,
yes,
okay.
I am a little familiar with it. The majority of times when we get calls to our housing department related to this type of situation, we'll refer over to our senior helpline. The senior helpline's equipped to kind of filter out those issues, and sometimes these types of issues get referred to our older adult protective services unit, or we refer to organizations like CLS and other community legal services and other legal staff that can help with that. We do have a legal department too at PCA, and they've dealt with this on many occasions.
So, well, listen, for my colleagues and Councilman Taubenberger and Green and Don were here, I will just state for the record, I just heard this on Saturday. It was not something that I thought was happening as frequent as it does. And with that being said, maybe Mr. Chairman, Councilman Green, because you raised this issue, and Councilman Dom, this is something we should visit, because it made me think of how many seniors, particularly when we hear Lydia talk about those who have a language barrier, right? What about those who don't have, a child, not that they can trust, but one who is responsibly taking on the role of managing their finances? I did not think about that until Michelle Lewis from Northwest Counseling, she gave us this case study and said the Housing Counseling Agency felt it. And so they tried to like outweight the child to like have to go to the bathroom. And she said she could feel it, and they looked, and she said, you know what? I left my notary stamp back at the office to sort of buy some time. It was really unnerving. So maybe this is something that we should explore.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, thank you, Councilman Parker. I know this is an issue. I recall when we did the hearings last fall regarding financial fraud in this committee, that issue came up somewhat of bullying from family members who are doing that. Also, I know there is, and I believe this contract is through PCA, the Ombudsman program, yes, where I know Senator Park and there's a bunch of other senior agencies provide ombudsman services to seniors at nursing facilities where they may feel they're being harassed or taken advantage of by the nursing facility. However, maybe using that model could be a framework for broadening that for people who are in their own homes who are being bullied, because you have some people that come to nursing homes or just senior centers that may need those services, but they can't get those services in their house, but they could get it through a senior center. So taking the ombudsman type of program that is already providing help for seniors at nursing homes, maybe having ombudsmans go to senior centers as the resources, because they already do, because you already have a network that do that in nursing homes, because basically the ombudsman process is, listen, at each nursing center has to provide information regarding the ombudsman, so that way seniors feel comfortable talking to someone as a third party, saying if you're being challenged or bullied at that nursing home, here's someone we can talk to. But maybe broadening that, since you already have a network, to senior centers, so those who go to a senior center, they go out and they have fun, some take trips, but having someone in that neutral space could provide that service, which is outside of them. Because a lot of seniors do go to senior centers all around the city, and that's someone that may be comfortable in giving that information, as opposed to if they're in their in their home, they won't have that same level of comfort. So maybe that's an idea. I know PCA works the ombudsman process, and maybe that's a way of broadening that. But I think Councilman Parker's right. That's a good conversation to have.
Right. That's certainly a good idea. And we serve about 20,000 folks through our senior centers, and we have a pretty healthy ombudsman program. So I can go back and certainly share that information and talk about it. That's a good idea.
Expect to see a resolution surface from the committee, from the four of us that were here, and also with your input as well on what we can do to hold a hearing on that and have a full discussion on that topic, because I think it's very important.
We would be happy to
Very
participate.
good. Councilwoman Parker, you raised a very, very good issue here.
Thank you. Just a final question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
It was about the SHARP program, home repairs, modifications provided to low-income Philadelphia homeowners. If you have the data now, you can answer. If not, don't worry about it. I just wonder how many people call to access the SHARP program but are not income eligible?
Not many, because we have a cost-sharing component to the program. So those that want to use those services and have that work done, we can work with them based on it's income-based. The majority aren't cost-share, and we would love to serve more through that program as well.
Let me also ask you, the contractors who do the work, does PCA sort of have a network? So thinking about contractor fraud, right?
Yes.
Obviously, you've been successful. Everybody knows the SHARP program. We know what the demand is like for your program. But what do you do with, how do you get your contractors? Where do they come from? How do they get on your list?
They're PCA staff. So the way this works is I have 5.5 mechanics that do this work for us. And then we
In-house.
have 4 inspectors. But it's a different type of model. So we send out a social worker first to look at the house, talk to the consumer, discuss housing needs. Then once the consumer says what they want, the inspector goes out and looks to see if we can do it. Many of these houses we work in are over 100 years old. And so if we change a faucet, pipes break, drains break, so we have to be very careful. But they're my staff.
This
Now-
internal.
Now, for the waiver program, we hire contractors for that. And we've got a good handful of very good contractors. And one of the researchers at PCA was telling me a few weeks ago, one of the most requested services in a recent survey he did was having PCA talk about what contractors should be vetted and saying, use this contractor. Now there's legal ramifications around doing that, but we have many, many people that ask, who could we use? Who could we hire? We can't really do that.
I just want you to put a pin in that to say you'll be hearing from me very soon.
Oh, okay, great.
Because what you
Wonderful.
just described is a part of the larger sort of picture of being able to access contractors who are affordable
Yes.
and
honest.
honorable
And honest,
right?
yes.
Who are actually going to do the work, while also making sure that we focus on the recruitment of women and disabled business and minority businesses, right? And so we have something that we're moving on, and Councilman Taubenberger, even with that, again, because of its impact on our aging community, we will make sure that you and members of this committee are well aware of it, but
Sure.
we'll be coming to you really soon. I just tried to bait him a little bit,
No,
to
no,
let him
I'm-
know we're gonna be asking them for some help very soon. So just thank you all so very much for what you do.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Parker, thank you very much. Ms. Schlossberg, I do have one question for you, if I could, and that is from your testimony on page 3. It was the next to last paragraph. The number of affordable rental units available for every 100 lower-income renter households fell from 82% to 68% between 2005 and 2014. Why do you think that happened?
Part of the reason why the number of affordable rental units fell is a combination of a reduction just leaving the market, properties that were torn down, properties that are no longer viable, but also
You
properties.
mean viable in the sense that they weren't upcut
Yeah,
properly?
they weren't kept up, or that they were demolished intentionally, or they were demolished because they had to be. The other factor is that a number of these units are being converted, so partly.
Being converted
To higher income. So the particular loss of the 20 to 23,000 units in the city were, a number of them, a high percentage of them were in kind of what some call escalating gentrifying communities, Center City, West Philly, and I can't remember what the third, like this sort of the Fishtown, Kensington area, where there had been naturally, there's always an acronym, right? But sort of like naturally occurring affordable housing. It's sort of like now there's naturally occurring retirement communities, naturally occurring affordable housing, which were units that were at market available to people who were lower income, because sort of the balance in Philadelphia was that it wasn't that expensive to live here. As the economy has changed, as we've had this in-migration, a lot of those sort of ring communities, particularly West Philly, it's not so ring, but West Philly and parts around Center City have dramatically converted. And you can see it in Point Breeze, you can see it in Fishtown, you can see it in Kensington, you can see it in parts of West Philly. So sometimes it was taking properties that were in decay, or not 100% up to code, but people were living in otherwise, and other times there were properties that were vacant, or people are just out and out, getting things slipped underneath their door saying, I'll buy your building. So we're losing a lot of what some also call naturally occurring affordable housing of 1 to 4 units to smaller rentals that you can buy them now and turn them into student housing. You can turn them into lots of other things and make a lot more money.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Schlossberg and Mr. Myers and Mr. Thiel, thank you for being part of our hearing today.
We applaud you. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Wright, if you would please call the final panel.
John Getting, Angela Forshaw Rouse,
One is AARP. She has to speak. If you could please identify yourself for the record, and also you can start at whoever wants to start first. You can work that out between each other.
Hello, good afternoon, Council. How are you? My name is Angela Forshaw Rouse, and I'm with the AARP Office of Pennsylvania.
And my name is John Geeting. Here as a concerned citizen, but work for Philadelphia 3.0.
So we just want to definitely be here today to thank you and commend Council for taking up this very important issue of housing, especially for older Philadelphians. Livable communities is a very major concern issue for AARP, and it's something that we're monitoring closely across the country. So again, thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony at today's hearing. And we speak today on behalf of our 1.8 million members in Pennsylvania and our over 800,000 members in the Philadelphia region. When AARP considers the issue of senior housing, we broaden the topic to focus on the concept of livable communities, recognizing that housing is the key component for this concept. AARP has established 6 key principles of livable communities. They are secure affordability. Those are communities that should provide transportation, housing, and other services and features that are affordable to people of all income levels. Very important for AARP. Another key component is ensuring equitable access. All people should have access to affordable transportation and housing, as well as a safe and healthy environment in which to live. Ensuring quality. Individuals should have high quality choices to meet their needs, including housing and transportation. Prioritize accessibility and the ability to age in place. People of all abilities and ages should be able to enjoy services and community features that meet their needs, allowing them to live in the setting of their choice and increase their access to destinations in and around this great city. Promote health, safety, and environmental sustainability. Communities should support the right of individuals from all incomes and backgrounds to live safe and healthy lives. Achieving holistic policymaking. All communities should recognize and act on the intersections between livable communities and such issues such as health, wellness, safety, work, education, environmental concerns, and social engagement to enable residents across all generations to live their best lives. In considering these principles that I've just read before you, the affordability of housing for older citizens is a major factor in Philadelphia and in other large cities across the country. In so many instances, older citizens face a situation where they become home rich, but in their reality, their living situation is in serious jeopardy. Older homes often require very expensive maintenance, and of course, property taxes can be a significant burden for many on a fixed income. Even for those willing to sell their homes and move to smaller spaces, the cost of moving may be cost prohibitive. Cities like Philadelphia face a dilemma. At the same time that housing stock is being modernized to attract new residents, the affordability of housing is increasing beyond the reach of many longtime residents of this great city. It requires a careful strategy to ensure that older residents are not left behind as Philadelphia moves forward. There is no magic bullet solution to guarantee older citizens have a safe, affordable housing choice. AARP does believe that housing trust funds, tax credits, bonds, and addressing the property tax question are all part of the equation, but how everything adds together is the discussion that we must have and is taking place today. Most importantly, as housing issues are discussed and debated in the city, the work of the committee that is so very important will need to take a look at the concerns of older Philadelphians, and it should be a much-needed integral part of the conversation. AARP stands ready to work with this committee and other elected officials and interested organizations and citizens to make affordable senior housing available in Philadelphia. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here today and the opportunity to discuss this issue.
You're very welcome. Mr. Gady.
Thank you to the chair, Councilman Taubenberger, and Councilman Green for organizing this hearing. Thank you to the members of the committee. Building on what we heard this morning about today's seniors' desire to age in place in environments that preserve their independence and their mobility and their connections to family and community. I wanted to underscore one idea that we heard about today, which is accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units is an issue that I wanted to kind of drill down on a little bit and boost the signal on. I had just been doing a little bit of research about this topic recently, and it seems we have an interesting opportunity here in Philadelphia. They're sometimes called granny flats or in-law suites. They're about 400 to 500 square foot backyard cottages that allow a homeowner to either house a relative on their property or create an additional income stream by renting it to a tenant, which may be great for people who are on a fixed income and may want to make it a little bit of additional money. And it's a way to create more housing that allows aging people to live with their families, but have an independent living space that gives them some privacy as well. And in addition to what we were talking about earlier with the need for more single-story homes without stairs, this is yet another sort of option for that. Before going further, I want to say this is not a silver bullet. I don't think there's like any kind of silver bullets in this discussion, but I do think it's a choice that people should have, and it's especially interesting because it doesn't require an outlay of taxpayer money. It's something that we can make with more of these happen with a free policy change in the zoning code. Looking at some of the evidence from some other cities, particularly these have taken off in the Northwest of the United States and Vancouver. Vancouver is really probably the best North American example of these. And it's not, it's again, not a silver bullet for affordability either. They tend to be more in the moderately affordable category rather than like deeply affordable. And I think a lot of it depends on how easy it is to actually build them. Vancouver's gone a long way, probably further than anybody in that direction. But they've been, since the 1980s, they've built about 2,600 of these units. So it's not an insignificant amount. It's not going to be for everybody, but about a third of single-family homes in Vancouver do have one of these accessory dwellings on the back, which is kind of remarkable. So here in Philly, about a third of single-family homes in Vancouver
homes have accessible
accessory dwelling unit attached to it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. So this, Philly, we've got really dense like downtown area where it's not going to be, probably the best fit there. Although I'm in Fishtown and like I have, I'm in like an RSA 5 neighborhood, but we have like a pretty deep backyard. Like sometimes I think like, hey, could I, my dad's going to get old at some point, like could we build like a backyard thing for my dad? And we actually have like pretty deep backyards. So I think it makes sense mostly for like the Northwest and the Northeast where you've got some yards where you've got some space. So where this stands in the 2012 zoning reform, the city created some language in the code for ADUs, but it still says reserved in that spot. It's in section 1460411, and so it basically spells out the whole thing, but it doesn't actually write in any of the zoning categories in those spaces. So that's kind of the work that's left to be done. And I understand that from having some conversations with folks at planning about this, that there may be some additional legislative changes that would be needed to make this kind of take off. But like at a minimum, like the main thing that needs to happen is I think it's RSD 1, 2, and 3 were the ones that they initially intended to be written in there, and that's sort of what's on council's plate. So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you, everybody.
Well, Mr. Gating and Ms. Rouse, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Is there anyone else that would like to testify that is here, that's waited? Well, I thank you all very, very much. I want to thank Councilman Green for his leadership in bringing this forward, and Councilwoman Parker was exceptionally helpful in testimony and things going forward, gave us some ideas this morning. Councilman Dom had to leave for a previous meeting, and appreciate his working on our committee as well. We're going to recess at the call of the chair, but I do ask everyone to keep in mind the prayers of those people in Las Vegas that lost their lives or lost family members and are injured. This is something that is just terrible. It has shaken me to the core of my humanity, why these things happen, but please do that. And I think we'll recess at the call of the chair, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.